Welcome, everybody, to the Dave Knows Comics live stream. I'm your host, David Lee. And welcome to the show. Now, for those of you who were joining me last week, which I appreciate, you might know that I was looking to do this episode previously, but I did the Avengers VR thing, and I just had to talk about that instead because it was just so awesome, and you can check out that episode also if you want to. But the Watchmen show, yeah, overdue. So we're going to be talking about that this week on this week's show. And just to get the Avengers VR stuff out of the way, for anybody who's interested, there was a particular image I did not get to show you guys, so I just forgot to. So for those of you who are interested, I will be showing that just a little bit from now. Okay, so here's going to be the show. Actually, you know what? Let's just get that. Let's get into the show. So, The Watchmen. Okay, let's finally get into it. HBO's Watchmen, a companion series, a follow-up series. Some have speculated possibly a reboot. Not very sure. Now, it looks like it's going to be a direct sequel to the comic books. We'll specify more why later on. But for right now, it does look like it is a comic book sequel show. And that's interesting because there was a Watchmen film directed by the divisive Zack Snyder, as I found out on this channel. It can be very controversial. But yeah, there was a film directed by Zack Snyder, which they apparently are not acknowledging. And instead they're going on to be more from the comic books. At least it appears that way. Some have speculated this is an alternate universe, an alternate dimension Watchmen. This is not exactly the Watchmen we know, or that this is perhaps a retelling of it, or a reboot. Not sure. This works in a rebooted universe. There's a lot of things that we're unsure, or just it's even been said to just be Watchmen inspired. Watchmen inspired. So we don't really know where this is at yet, 100% until we know what's going on. How do I feel about the show? Well, let's just get right into it. Might as well. I'm not the biggest fan of this. And even though the second episode did come out, I did not watch it. I'll just straight up confess that right now. I watched the first episode. That's why I meant to talk about it last week. Did not see the second episode. I am not interested in seeing it. Hey there, Bally. It might be a sequel that takes place before the Doomsday Clock. It might be. Though I'm not sure about that, but we will get into that. As well later on, because there is a couple of other issues to talk about. So catching us up, but thank you for joining us. And to catch things up, so it looks like it falls somewhere as a direct sequel to comic books, but I'm glad that you brought that up, Bally. One of the other additions of this live format is that I get to interact with you directly. So one thing that there is to say about this live format is that you brought that up, and I'm glad you did, because there is the Doomsday Clock series that DC is doing. DC Comics is doing a sequel series from the original comic books, incorporating the Watchmen universe into the DC continuity, the main DC universe. This has been met with some praise, some backlash, and thank you for the thumbs up, by the way. Some praise, some backlash. It's gone back and forth. Some people really like this, and some people hate that they're doing this. And so the question is, where exactly does that fall into play? Does the DC Doomsday Clock series that's in the comic books, that's going on in the comic books, which I will admit they are very much dragging their feet on. I kind of thought they would have this all sewn up by now, but not really. Are a lot of big implications done by the whole Doomsday Clock series. That really doesn't fit into what we know from the TV show so far. It seems like the TV show is going to be its own thing. So the way it appears to me, it seems like this is a sequel to the comic book, the original comic book, and is not acknowledging any of the work by DC. And if that's the case, we're just looking at two separate sequel series, one in comic book form, one in HBO, that are follow-ups to the original Watchmen. Now, I will admit I am one of those snobby Watchmen purists out there that feel like, don't touch it, leave it alone. Don't do anything with it. The graphic novel is the graphic novel. That is it. We don't need a movie. We don't need a reboot. We don't need a sequel. It is what it is. We don't need a prequel, and they were prequels too. We don't need anything else. We have the characters. We know what this is. This is it. This is the story. Leave it alone. I am one of those guys. I'll be the first one to say that. So this show was actually working off of a rough context because I am going to be very judgmental about it no matter what they did. There was really no way out of it. So But let's go back into the show. So now that that's said, that you know that I came in there really, really going, ugh, why are you doing this? I did the same thing with the Doomsday Clock series. I did the same thing with the prequels before Watchmen. I did the same thing with everything else. And I know the argument is these are rich, complex characters. There's room to play. There's other stories to tell. That's true. However, the original series, the original Watchmen, was the story to tell. Are there others? Yes. Are they going to be as good? It's something I think a lot of us forget about when we start clamoring for prequels or sequels and stuff like that. Or even in the Star Wars universe, where people are talking about, oh, there's so many things to talk about outside of the Skywalkers, and Star Wars is an entire galaxy. Why are we always focused on the Skywalkers? And then when they give you little bits and pieces that aren't like Skywalker related, like TV shows or side or now spin-offs and stuff like that, comic books and stories and books and novels and all that, they're always saying, yeah, that's good. I like this. Why do we always focus on the Skywalkers? Well, that is the main series. And I'm not saying that there aren't other Star Wars stuff that is cool. But the idea that a story leaves you wanting more is a good thing. Like, I love Darth Maul from the prequels. I thought he was awesome. You get a little bit of mystery to him. You don't really know all that about him. But other than, hey, Mark Strike, hey, Dave, have you watched a show called... No, I have not. But have you, but with Darth Maul, it's like, do you want more of him? If you got that payoff, would it be as satisfying? Not everything's going to be Wolverine Origins, okay? And I don't mean the movie, I mean the comic book. Not everything is going to deliver on the expectations, these other stories that you want. Not everything's going to deliver as good as you want it to be. All right, Bally says, Doomsday Clock is good, but delays hurt it. Yes, it does. I agree with that. And the way previous issues erased the classic Legion to push Bendis' Legion really upset. Yeah, there's that too. I'm not going to argue that. I heard Watchmen was woke men. That's not bad, and I want to get into that. Mark Strike, but you know what? Since you brought that up, let's go ahead and get into that. So, okay, diatribe aside, leaving you wanting more, real quick to wrap up, leaving you wanting more from a story is great. That's awesome. You don't need to milk it for all it's worth. There might be other stories out there, but if they're not going to be as good as the one you just told, why bother? And fine. Star Wars, there are other Star Wars stories that you like, fine. But I'm not, and even if you like it better than the originals, that's not what I feel, but if you like that, fine. But I'm just pointing out, all these Watchmen books, before Watchmen, all the side novels, Doomsday Clock, everything we've gotten, the movie, has any of it been better than the original comic book? Maybe that's just me, but I say no. I say the original comic book Watchmen is the best story of Watchmen by far, anything with the Watchmen brand on it. If you say there's something else, and did you personally like better? It's subjective, fine, that's up to you. But my thing is, if you're going to fall short, why bother? Why waste your time if you're just going to do something smaller? Now, don't get me wrong. I drink the Kool-Aid like anybody else. When they announce a new Watchmen thing, I'm interested. They got my attention. I want to know. But at the same hand, it never quite lives up to the original. And so if you're just going to be a failed copy or a less than, and also ran to the original, it's one of those things to leave alone. Now, I understand that people just want to make money, and they also have to make sure they keep making money off of Watchmen. So I understand that that's their MO, but either way, that's how I feel about it. So, all right. But yes, now let's go into the woke man portion of it, as you so eloquently put out there. Because there is this. A lot of race. They brought up race, they bring up race a lot. And in case you haven't seen, it appears that there are some Rorschach disciples or followers or people who believe in who have glorified Rorschach, and they very much seem to be representative or symbolic of the KKK. It seems that's the way they're going. So I will point out that I think Watchmen is way more race related than I really think it should be. Okay, Arthur Pryor, blah blah blah. It's nothing to do with Disney, fool. And Arthur, you have no taste in superheroes. That is correct. But this has nothing to do with Disney. It has to do with HBO. So But thank you for joining, and thank you for the second thumbs up. Okay, so there's a big component of race in this Watchmen series, which I find surprising. Now, I'm not going to pretend. Now, the HBO series is tackling that a little bit. The movie, not so much. I don't think the movie really tapped into race as much. I think the comic book, the subtext for racial relations and race in the world was there. I don't think it was overtly hit in the head, but I do think it was there. Where the movie, I think, kind of just sidestepped it. Arthur always gets burned. That's what happens when you play with matches, son. You know, yeah, you don't even know how to type. As I said, you don't know how to write. Okay, so going back in, and welcome, Arthur. So going back to the Watchmen thing. So race, but in the show, it seems to be very, very prevalent. And also, not only do we have the Rorschachs, but we also have the police, which part of this is something I like a lot, but there's also another thing. Oh, and by the way, now that a couple of you guys are here, I do want to point out last week with the Avengers VR, there was one picture I forgot to share, and I just want to. So real quick, now that you guys are here, I just do want to show. Bam! It's me doing the VR. Okay. Anyway, back to the Watchmen show. So when we see the Watchmen show and we see the Rorschachs and we see that the cops are now dressed. So to give a quick summary, the idea here is that if we had costume vigilantes fighting crime and doing all that in a universe, the police need to hide their identities as well. Why are they not allowed to? And one of my favorite parts of the Watchmen comic book was when they talked about how the original Night Owl knew that he had to be the second mass vigilante when someone made that jump from comic books into real life. It was great. It was a theme echoed in Kick-Ass. I liked the idea a lot. It was a practical way to understand how someone will become a superhero. And seeing the world react in this way is what Watchmen is all about. Because we see in a lot of Alan Moore's work, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and of course Watchmen, we see the ideas that if we had this, why do we still have this? Or what would a world look like if superheroes were real? Or these specific superheroes were real? What would the world be like? And if we had these superheroes, there would be certain problems or certain things that wouldn't exist anymore because there'd be no point to it. And there would be a lot of stuff that would exist that don't exist in our real life world. So that's what a lot of Alan Moore's work is. And I also wrote an article. It's on cracked.com. I used to write for Cracked. Actually explores this concept a little bit further, so if you want, you can check that out. But when it comes to the Watchmen universe, what is the natural extension of this? So for me, the idea is that the police department would eventually don masks themselves. That makes sense. I get that. That does seem like something that would happen. However, on the reverse end of this, when we look at today's society, we have a lot of racial issues. I'm not going to get into what I think specifically about the race issues going on today, especially since I think some things are going to come up later on the wrestling live stream. Anyway, when it comes to race in today, the police department, Black Lives Matter, things and all that, we're seeing a lot of it being touched upon or being referenced or it being hinted at. And maybe it's not necessarily race, but it is the idea about police and the citizens and that kind of exchange. Now, because nothing is simple, there is a lot of nuance to it. If it's about race, I think we have a problem. And race specifically is brought up a lot in the show, or maybe not even a lot, but it is brought up. You can tell that this is a focal point. You can tell that racial identity is something that is happening. But I personally feel this wouldn't be the case if this was a companion series to Watchmen. Now, unless they clarify this in the second episode, because again, first episode was enough for me. I was out. But when I look at the first episode and we're seeing the race thing, I don't think it tracks. Because let's remember, the ending of the original Watchmen comic book, which this seems to be derived from, race, wars, humanity, all put aside. World peace was achieved at the belief, even though it was false, that there is alien life out there. An alien threat was enough to scare us into ending the Cold War that had escalated even further beyond what it actually became in our real life. And also things like that. And it was said in Star Trek First Contact. The idea is that once mankind learned that we were not alone in the universe, we united in a way that no one ever thought possible. And all wars, poverty, racism, all the prejudice, all these things were just eliminated because it was no longer this specific, you specifically. We just became the human race. It just became that. We just all got along a lot better. And I do believe that would happen personally. So in a world where we were threatened by this, and the whole point of Ozymandias' plan was to unite humanity through the idea of an alien threat, I don't think race would be a problem anymore. It makes no sense that it would be, unless, unless, unless Rorschach's journal revealed to the public that alien was a lie. And if that was the case, then fine. And if they acknowledge that in the second episode, I apologize. But if they acknowledge that in the second episode, okay, fine. But if the humanity still believes that the squid is real, then that the squid is an actual alien, then fine. Hey, Harry Flynn. As an actual alien, then I don't think the race should be as prevalent. But let's move on. Because there is something else I do want to talk about. Because when we talk about the giant squid, we got to talk about the giant squid. It's raining little tiny baby squids, which I guess are a reference. But as you can see from this picture in the comic book, this isn't no regular squid. Why would little baby squids be raining from the sky? I don't 100% know. It seems to be connected to this alien monster, but that's just an assumption, and I can't tell that it's necessarily correct. And it's an odd thing, and I want them to explain this. I'm very, very, very worried because we have the mind behind Lost behind this, and yeah, a lot of great mysteries that made you say whoa, and then a lot that just went. But if you stick to the first 3 seasons, they're amazing. And the way I learned it is, if you really want to get into Lost, just watch 3 seasons and stop. No matter how much you want to keep watching more, just stop. Because Jeff Loeb, Paul Dini, J.J. Abrams, those are the real guys. So unless they came on board to this Watchmen show, I'm pretty sure. So it's not going to work out as well. Arthur probably is an alien. So there you go. It's that we're dealing with here. So it's Lost, and it's making a sequel to Watchmen we don't need. Okay, Bally says, issues still exist, but the problem is that media has overly used that as a trope lately, not because they believe in the message, but because they want to make profit out of it. Yeah, I agree that's true for whatever, anything you want to say about that. I do. This is going to be a little bit of a sidetrack, but I was getting this conversation with a friend. So this is the way. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a sidetrack, but I think it's prevalent right now. When it comes to media, how does it work? Well, media starts noticing that certain issues, certain stories, or certain topics tend to get more watched, more clicks, whatever. So they start and by that, they make more money. So they start producing more content like that because they make more money, and people start watching more, and and sometimes it can actually change what people think about the said topic. Now, here's the question. Is this because media is manipulating the masses into keep funneling certain stories and making it seem like this is a bigger issue than it is to the people, and therefore they're brainwashing the people? Or is it really that the people are clicking on it and they're beholden by their money, so they're going to keep wanting to click, media keeps wanting to click on what they want, on what the people want? So is it really that the people are manipulating media? Which way does it work? Is it the media manipulating people by making certain topics seem like they're bigger deals than they are? Or is it that the people are manipulating the media by making them do these stories because it makes them money? I feel it's a little bit of both, but I think it's an interesting concept that you bring up, and so I just wanted to touch upon that. Okay, but so not really sticking to the topic of the race, but talking about the kayfabe comic book world, I don't believe if this is an extension of the Watchmen series that race would be an issue anymore, unless it's widely known, yeah, and I agree with you, Bally, widely known that the alien is fake. Unless that is the case, I really don't think race issues would exist in this universe, so I think that's kind of strange. If superheroes were real, businesses would try to make money out of them, like sponsorships. Or like The Boys. Boys is a perfectly good example, but I will express my love for Boys. I'll try to remember to express that very momentarily. However, I will say, though, there is another way out of this for the Watchmen series, because let's go back to the Image of the Cops. if now you could tell if you could tell from this picture, these police officers are not all the same race. They are different races. Now, if they're trying to say that it is not a race thing, and this is simply a policeman authority versus populace, then we have a different story. So if it's the police, and as we saw from the first episode, we have the member of the Rorschachs, or I forgot what they call themselves, but we have a member of that team being getting into an altercation with a police officer. If it's about authority versus the citizens or the civilians, the people versus the authority, people versus the police versus law enforcement, then I'm okay with it. Because the whole point of Watchmen is who watches the Watchmen. And they even quote that. Quis custodiet, ipsa quis custodiet, and that is Latin for who watches the Watchmen, who guards the Guardians, stuff like that. So that concept is in there. So if this is not about race, then I'm way more okay with it. I cannot stress enough that they do bring up race, or the topic of race seems to be brought up. So I do think that plays some, which I think should be completely eliminated, because I don't think race should matter. Even though it does seem to be playing a function. They're not specifically calling it out, but it does seem to be still playing a function. Where I think if the natural conclusion to Watchmen is that racism would be eliminated. But furthermore, if we're looking at an authority figure, if we're looking at an authority versus the people, then okay, because that's what the core concept of Watchmen has always been. However, we could still say it may not be the most advantageous, and only because of this man right here. If they've confirmed it, then okay. But as far as I know, they have not 100% confirmed that Jeremy Irons is playing Ozymandias, the mastermind behind the Watchmen plot of the giant alien squid. So we're seeing the character, we're seeing Jeremy Irons, but I don't know 100% which character he is, if he is any character specifically. So when we're seeing Jeremy Irons and his plan, if he is Adrian Veidt, if he is playing Ozymandias, then I do have another question, is that if his plan was revealed to be a failure, or if it was revealed to be a false, why is he not working on something else? Hey there, Vinny Montaigne. Wouldn't he be working on something else other than just having cake and writing plays? As far as I'm concerned, no, Harry Flynn, Watchmen is not DC. It is owned by DC. It is not DC. Never has been DC, and it never will be DC, no matter how many Doomsday Clock novels they write. So that's where I'm looking at. If it's a matter of authority, if it's a matter of that, why has Adrian Veidt, how has he not interacted more with this universe? How has he not done something else? How have they gone so far without doing anything more with him? Or why has he just let these decades pass without doing anything? And I don't know. And most brilliant man, there's got to be something to it. And if he was revealed that the alien was fake, I'm pretty sure he's going to jail. He wouldn't be, because he killed millions. So wouldn't he be in jail, not in this fancy mansion with his butler and his maid playing Downton Abbey or whatever that stupid show is that people like? That I've never watched one episode, so you say, oh, you have to watch it. I'm not going to. So it might be amazing, but I'm not going to watch it. So I don't get it. I just don't get it. So I have a lot of issues with that. And now the overall arching point is going back to the idea that this is created by the guy who created Lost. We have to remember that I'm fully aware that watching judging the whole show off of one episode seems odd to a lot of people. There's a lot they're saving for the rest of the season or the rest of the series beyond this. Oh, let's go back to what Bailey says. From what I understand, we as readers weren't supposed to read Rorschach's actions except trying to discover the truth. It was just he was the best written out of all the characters. That's fair. I think all the characters have merit. I think they all have pluses and minuses, and it's just a matter of perspective. Yeah, he's cool. He's the coolest one. But I don't 100% know that we're not supposed to necessarily support his actions. Because, okay, let's go back to the ending of the book. The idea is, if the world was saved but off of a lie, is that right? If there was a man who revealed the truth and who had proof of the truth, even though it would mean unstabilizing the world peace that was just newly created, is it right that it gets out to the public because it's the truth? Or is it outweighed by the greater good? That's a concept that I think a lot of people can understand, or a lot of people can identify with, or can support. I don't think you're supposed to support anybody or not support anybody. It's just whose actions do you want to support? It's up to you. It's how do you feel. These are all actions that are given out there for discussion. And I don't think there's a supposed to. I don't think there's a right answer. I think they're all there. And I think part of the brilliance of shows like Cobra Kai is that nobody's 100% bad or 100% good. There's like a bright and a negative to everybody, except for Kreese. I know they tried to make him like a little more redeemable, but I'm sorry, he's not. He's the bad guy. But yeah, just seeing all these. So when it comes to all these shows and everything like that, all these characters in Watchmen, it is a matter of everybody's got some right, everybody's got some wrong. That's the way I look at it. But anyway, so going back to the idea of Ozymandias, I think he would be in jail for killing billions of people. I don't know. It just seems like a thing to me. And so I know that this is trying to eke out more episodes and they're giving you over a slow burn. I get that. That's how TV works today. For me, I've never really loved that idea. I do kind of lament that about modern television. A lot of times people say, "Oh, so good, you got to watch this." I feel if I can't get anything out of one episode, then why do I care? I want more episodic shows to be more self-contained, and this goes into Stranger Things. I don't know how you guys feel, but some people feel that Stranger Things 2 is better than season of 1. Now, I'm going to give generic, broad, sweeping ideas of plot and writing. I'm not going to spoil anything in case you're somehow not caught up on Stranger Things, but I'm going to throw this out there. So, for me, season 1 is clearly the best. I like season 3 the second best, season 2 the least best. Season 2 I'm just on, and here's the reason why. So, again, I'm really not going to give anything away, so if you're worried about that. But the thing about season 1 is, if you go back and watch, the first episode, the plot, right away, the idea, the problem, because as shows, movies, they're all about problems. The problem is established right away that Will is, and this is the first, like, couple of minutes, so okay, fine, I'm giving away this detail, is that Will goes missing, and the boys want to find their friend. That is the major problem of the entire season. And now there are multiple antagonists, multiple roadblocks, obstacles, preventing them from solving that problem. Maybe they're not directly trying to stop them from this problem, but they're still delaying this problem. It's their parents won't let them out, or they have to go to school, or the bullies in school just want to beat them up. Even though they're not aware of anything, they're not specifically trying to stop them from anything. And let's also not forget about monsters and, in a certain extent, Hopper trying to stop them. Bailey says, I agree, even if the show is meant to binge watch, there's a point of watching it in early episodes. Yes, and I completely agree with that. I do think episodes should be self-contained. There should be a plot within that. But let me continue the Stranger Things analogy. So there were multiple antagonists delaying them from solving the problem. You know, monsters and the Upside Down and all this stuff. And other problems come up too, for sure. And does Stranger Things, this first season, does it eke things out? Yeah, of course. Does it kind of blur together as one thing? Sure. But if you read the title of every episode, you know what is going to be about. So in this mini episode, while that is the overarching plot for the season, there are some other problems that we have, that we get introduced to. And it's like 11, like who is she, or what's the story, or how can we keep 11 secret from mom, and then bring her in the house and get her through that, and then so every episode has a mini plot within it, which is what I prefer. And in really old times, like A-Team or even The Saint, or really old shows, depending how far you go back, that episode, you didn't need to know a lot of continuity. Like, this is the double-edged sword of continuity, is that unfortunately sometimes it bites you. Shows used to really have no continuity. It was just this episode was about this thing, and then you moved on. And I kind of miss that. And that was how I always wanted a Batman show to be made, a Batman prequel show. Anyway, so when it comes to Watchmen, what was the plot of the first episode? We really didn't get anything. We really just got a lot of world building. And world building's good. I don't mind world building. And that's probably this show's biggest strength is that they have tons of world building. It's very interesting, all the little nooks and crannies, all the little pieces of this world that they're connecting with each other, which I think is cool. So I do like that. But there's no real plot. Nothing really. I mean, yeah, there is one thing that happens, and that's they wasted this dude, Don Johnson, Sonny Crockett, wasted this guy. Just completely wasted this guy. Yeah, it was a big moment. It was a big shocking moment, but at the same time, there was no real story behind it. There was no problem that needed to be solved. It was just a thing that happened. Now, sure, maybe this is the problem that has to get solved. Hey, new subscriber. Now, there was a problem that get to be solved. Now, but now some of you might disagree. Now, I'm going to give you this right here. Let me clarify what I mean by no problem to be solved, because the problem that we do get solved is the incident with the police officer and that was shot by the Rorschach member. So that is a case that's trying to be solved. You could say that's the problem. That's what they're trying to solve. But here's the thing: they don't solve it in that episode. Now, do they? If you wanted to say that was the case, fine. Now, could you say that solving this case could be the theme for the entire season? Possibly. Fine. But for this episode, there really was no plot. That's what I want to point out. And so same thing goes for, and I think if you want to, give us problem for an entire season, though, I kind of feel like that may not be the most weighted. I think they could have given something a little more. Because same thing with Stranger Things. The reason why I think it works is the monsters and the Upside Down and all that other stuff are incidental. The main problem is that the boys want to find their friend. That has an emotional stake because they care about him. It's a human problem. Everything else doesn't matter. For this, it's a little different because if you want to tell me solving this, who shot this cop is your problem, let's solve it. Okay, well, the guy, Don Johnson, who was trying to solve it. By the way, in the Cobra Kai series, while I was just praising it, I do want to point this out. I'm tired of the joke of people not knowing who Don Johnson is. Because the kid, in the season 2, it's a throwaway joke, but the kid was talking about, they were arguing about, they want to be, Ducky, and Ducky sucks, by the way. You should be Ducky from Pretty in Pink, or, hey, I got to be Jane Spader. But he doesn't know who Don Johnson is. He says some guy named Dan Johnson. He doesn't know who Don Johnson is. He doesn't know Miami Vice, but he knows Ducky, and anyway. Moving on. Point of the matter is, so Sonny Crockett is the one trying to solve this case, and at the end of the episode, he's done. Whether they bring him back or not, who knows? So they get rid of him at the end of the first episode. So then the series problem is going to be about him. So that's not the same thing as introducing a problem. That's introducing a problem that you don't really solve, and then you introduce another problem that's an extension of that. Stranger Things, as I said, Will gets kidnapped or gets taken to the Upside Down right in the beginning. You see the monster, you know it, the monster comes and gets him, eats him, or, sucks him up into whatever he does to get them to the end of the Upside Down. But the point of the matter is, Will gets taken right off the bat. We see this within the first couple of minutes of it, and that's a season-long arc. Beautiful. That's the way shows should be done. Bally says, a good example of balance I've watched, Ghost in the Shell, and while it had an overarching plot, a number of early episodes were standalone. Another example is Scooby-Doo Mystery Inc. That's two very different examples, but yes, there's tons of examples, and that's how storylines should be done for me, as far as I'm concerned. Now, thank you for the thumbs up, by the way. For me, going further, this isn't established. Season 2 of Stranger Things, I have a problem with this, because they don't know anything. They don't really have a problem to solve. Something wrong with Will doesn't happen until later in the series. Their opening plot is, who's Mad Max? That's not... just bought my knee. That's not a major point of it, and they don't really solve the thing. They don't even call the thing the Mind Flayer until the very end. If you want to say trying to find 11, while Mike is actively trying to find 11, that's not their goal either. They don't seem to be pursuing it all that hard. There's many goals, and they seem like they're prevalent, but they're really not. So, not as much as what the plot was for number 1. John Cryer plays Ducky, that's right, but Ducky sucks. So, it's not as prevalent, and they don't get onto the ball of the major plot, which is the antagonist of the Mind Flayer. Plus, they don't really have a lot of, and without that, they don't really have a lot of antagonists stopping them from reaching their goal because they don't really try to reach their goal. They have multiple different goals that don't really flow. There's no one for the entire season, and there's not even one that gets resolved in each episode. It's like, hey, Mike wants to find 11. Hopper, but I'll get into that later. I just realized I'm trying not to spoil things here. So anyway, point is, it's not as coherent a story, and I feel that Watchmen the series is falling into that. And I'm also very leery about it because of Lost. Lost did a lot of things like that. There were a lot of unresolved threads that they didn't get to, and then when they got there, it was like an unsatisfying ending, or it didn't make sense, or they just didn't answer it. Like Lost was great for the first 3 seasons, and then after that, nothing. First season was the best. Season 2 and 3 were good, and then after that, it was garbage. So I am leery because I'm worried that I'm going to get losted again, where it's going to be the same stuff where I'm going to be unsatisfied at how this ends, or they're not giving me enough antagonist story, and they're just doing a lot of world building, focusing on a lot of world building, which is what I think a lot of shows do nowadays. So those are my issues with the show. But Lost was a mess after season 3. Absolutely agree with that, Ron. So that's my issue with the Watchmen show. It's why I'm ultimately not getting into it. I appreciate certain aspects of them attempting to get more in line with the comic books and not the movie. But and I love the world building. I like the nuances they're putting to try to recreate this new world. However, I'm surprised how much I liked Cryer. I can't believe that Ducky from the crappy Superman movie, well, one of the crappy Superman movies, plays Lex Luthor. Like, I thought that was funny or interesting, but still. Then any Lex Luthor is better than Jesse Eisenberg? Absolutely. Best is always going to be Michael Rosenbaum, my boy. So my man, Michael Rosenbaum. Also Clancy Brown. Mad props to him too. But my boy, Michael Rosenbaum, he's a man. Anyway, so I appreciate the world building. I appreciate the idea to try and stick to the comic books, or at least seem like you're derivative of the comic book specifically. I appreciate that, but ultimately, I can't get into it. The structure's out there, and I'm still hurt from Lost. Still butthurt from Lost. Still don't trust it. No. He was in that Superman, Harry. He wasn't Luthor in that. He plays Luthor later on. Now he's playing Luthor now in the show, but he was Luthor's nephew in that Superman. Don't get it twisted. Okay, guys. So that's gonna do it for my Watchmen episode. Wanted to get that out there, but let me know what you think down in the comments if you are not here live, and also any other topics you want me to cover. Let's talk about it. And guys, as always, I'll be on. Or as usual, shall I say, maybe not always, but I will be checking you guys out on the wrestling channel in just a little bit. Okay, so thanks for being here, and as always, Dave, no.